poor waitress paid for a young man the next day. 300 soldiers lined up for her. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The rain was falling hard that night, drumming against the metal roof of a small roadside diner on the edge of town. Inside, the hum of a flickering neon sign cast soft pink light over empty booths and tired faces. It was almost midnight when Maya, a young waitress barely in her 20s, wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time. Her uniform was faded, her sneakers soaked through, and her back ached from a double shift. Tips had been slow again. She reached into her apron, counting the crumpled bills. $12. Barely enough for bus fare and a loaf of bread on her way home. Just then, the bell over the door jingled. A young man stepped in, drenched to the bone, his gray hoodie plastered to his skin, his boots tracking water across the floor. He looked maybe 25, exhausted but polite, eyes avoiding everyone's as he slipped into the farthest booth. Maya offered her usual tired smile. Kitchen's about to close, but I can still get you something warm. He nodded quietly. Just coffee, please. When she brought it over, he pulled a few coins from his pocket, barely enough to cover half the cost. I lost my wallet, he said, voice low, embarrassed. I'll pay you back, I promise. Maya hesitated, glancing toward her manager's office door, knowing what the answer would be if he saw this. But something about the man's eyes stopped her tired, yes, but honest. She smiled softly. It's fine, coffee's on me. The man blinked, surprised. You don't even know me. She shrugged. You looked like you needed it more than I did. He looked down, then said quietly, Thank you, miss. Maya, she replied. And you? Alex. He gave a faint smile, one that seemed to hold 1,000 things unsaid. They talked for a few minutes about the storm, about how quiet the town felt at night, until her manager coughed loudly from the doorway. Maya jumped, quickly handing Alex a napkin with his change and whispered, Don't worry about it, just get home safe. Alex nodded, sliding the napkin into his pocket like it was something precious. When he left, the cold wind rushed in behind him, scattering a few receipts across the floor. Maya sighed, leaning against the counter, unaware that the small act of kindness she'd just done would echo far beyond this rainy night. Because by the next morning, when the sun rose over the same street, something impossible was waiting outside her diner. Rows of military trucks, polished boots, and 300 soldiers standing at attention. But that's a story for the next part. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the sky still hung heavy and gray above the little town. Maya rubbed her eyes as she unlocked the diner door, her breath still visible in the cold air. Her shift started early, and she had barely slept, replaying the moment with the stranger in her mind. She wondered if he had found shelter, or if that thin hoodie had been enough to keep him warm through the storm. When she stepped inside, something felt off. The air was too still. The street, usually quiet, seemed to hum with an unfamiliar energy. She glanced outside and froze. Down the block, military trucks lined both sides of the road, their engines idling low, soldiers in immaculate uniforms standing in formation. 300 of them, maybe more, helmets shining under the pale Sunday. The sound of boots echoed as an officer barked orders, and the townspeople had already begun to gather, whispering and pointing toward the diner. Maya's manager stumbled out of the kitchen, jaw slack. What in the world? He muttered, rushing to the window. Before Maya could respond, the diner door opened, and in walked the same young man from the night before. Only this time, he was not wearing a hoodie. He wore a pressed uniform, medals gleaming across his chest, his posture straight and commanding. His eyes found hers instantly. Miss Maya, he said, his voice calm but firm. I owe you more than just a thank you. Her mind went blank. Alex? She breathed. He nodded. Captain Alexander Reed, U.S. Army. Yesterday, you paid for my meal when I had nothing but rain in my pockets. Today, I came to return that kindness. Maya blinked in disbelief, as he gestured toward the soldiers outside. "These men serve under me, and they stand here today as a reminder no act of compassion goes unseen." Her manager's face turned pale. "Captain, this was a misunderstanding. She was not supposed to—" "Sir," Alex interrupted gently, "the only misunderstanding would be failing to honor her integrity." Then he turned back to Maya, pulling a sealed envelope from his jacket and placing it on the counter. "This is for you," he said. "A grant from our unit's community fund to cover your mother's medical bills. And starting today, the U.S. Army will partner with this diner to provide free meals for veterans every Friday." The room fell silent. Maya stared at the envelope, tears stinging her eyes. I do not know what to say," she whispered. "Just keep being who you are," he replied. "You reminded me that rank means nothing without heart." He smiled faintly before stepping back toward the door, the soldiers outside snapping to attention as he exited. Cameras flashed as reporters swarmed the street, the story spreading before Maya could even process it. By evening, her phone was overflowing with messages, some from strangers thanking her, others from local charities offering help. But all she could think about was that quiet night, the sound of rain on the roof, and the stranger who had simply needed a cup of coffee. That small act, born out of pure instinct, had rewritten her entire life. Later that night, as she closed the diner, she looked out at the street where the soldiers had stood, the asphalt still marked by the tread of their boots. A folded napkin lay near the door, the same one she had given Alex, now neatly pressed and clean, with a few words written in careful penmanship. "Compassion is the highest honor. A.R." Maya held it close to her chest, her eyes glistening as she whispered, "Thank you, Captain." She turned off the lights and walked out into the cold night, unaware that this was only the beginning of something far greater than gratitude. For the next few days, life at the diner felt unreal. Reporters had come and gone, and Maya's story spread across local news stations like wildfire. Some people stopped by just to see the waitress who fed a captain. Others left letters and flowers on the windowsill. But once the headlines faded, the diner returned to its usual rhythm of steaming coffee pots and clinking plates. Maya preferred it that way. Fame made her uncomfortable. She just wanted things to go back to normal, though nothing really felt normal anymore. Every time she passed the window, she half expected to see a convoy of soldiers again. Her mother's hospital bills had been paid in full, thanks to the grant Captain Reed left. It felt like a dream, one she was afraid to wake up from. One rainy afternoon, as Maya refilled the sugar jars, the bell over the door rang. Her heart skipped when she looked up. There he was again, Captain Reed, though this time without his uniform. He wore a simple jacket and jeans, his posture relaxed but unmistakably confident. "Captain," Maya stammered, wiping her hands on her apron. "Please, just Alex today," he said with a faint smile. "Do you have a minute?" She nodded quickly and led him to a booth in the corner, her pulse racing as she poured 2 cups of coffee. "I wanted to thank you again," she began, but he shook his head. "No, Maya. I came to thank you." He explained that after the story went public, hundreds of people had reached out to his unit wanting to volunteer or donate to veteran causes. "You started something bigger than either of us," he said. A simple act of kindness created a movement. Maya's cheeks flushed. "I just did what anyone should do." Alex leaned forward slightly. "No, you did what most people would not." He paused, his tone softening. "I am putting together a program called HeartServe. It is a partnership between our unit and local businesses to support veterans and struggling families. I want you to be part of it." Maya blinked, startled. "Me? I am just a waitress." "No," he said gently. "You are the reason this exists. You know what it means to give when you have nothing. That kind of heart cannot be taught." For a long moment, she just stared at him, unsure if this was real. Her hands trembled as she lifted her cup. "I do not have experience in organizing things like that," she said quietly. "Then we will learn together," Alex replied with a small smile. "Besides, I think you would do great leading our community outreach." His confidence disarmed her. It was as if he saw something in her that she had forgotten existed. Maya hesitated, torn between fear and gratitude. "I will think about it," she finally said. "Good," Alex nodded. "I will come back tomorrow." He stood, leaving a business card on the table, clean, simple, embossed with a small emblem of his unit and his full name. When he left, Maya sat alone for a long time, tracing the letters with her fingertip. That night, she walked home under a clear sky for the first time in weeks. The air was cold, but the stars felt brighter, closer somehow. She thought of her mother sleeping peacefully for once, of the soldiers who had stood in front of her diner, and of the man whose quiet strength had changed everything. Maybe it was foolish, but for the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream of a life where kindness did not just survive, but built something lasting. She did not know yet that saying yes to his offer would soon pull her into a world far larger than she had ever imagined, and that her next act of courage was already waiting just around the corner. The next morning, Maya arrived at the community center Alex had told her about. The building stood near the edge of town, old but well kept, its brick walls lined with faded banners from past charity events. She clutched the business card in her hand, nerves twisting in her stomach. Part of her wanted to turn back, to tell herself she was just a waitress and not meant for things like this. But another part of her, the one that remembered how he had said, "You give when you have nothing," made her push the door open. Inside, several people were already setting up tables stacked with boxes of canned food and medical supplies. Alex was there, dressed casually again, sleeves rolled up as he helped lift crates from a truck. When he saw her, he smiled in that quiet, reassuring way. "You came," he said simply. "I said I would think about it," she replied, half smiling. "And? I am here, aren't I?" "That counts as a yes," he said warmly. He introduced her to the team veterans, volunteers, local business owners. Maya felt small among them, unsure where to start, but Alex guided her gently through the tasks. "Just do what you do best," he said. "Talk to people, make them feel seen." Over the next few hours, she did exactly that. She listened to stories from struggling families, handed out meals, and shared quiet conversations with veterans who had been forgotten by the world outside. Her kindness seemed to ripple through the room like light. Even the stern-looking officers softened when she spoke. Later, when the crowd thinned, Alex brought her a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter beside her. "You are a natural," he said. Maya laughed lightly. "I spilled soup on one of your men earlier." "He said it was the best part of his day," Alex replied, making her laugh again. There was an ease between them now, something that had not been there before. They talked until the sun dipped low behind the windows, turning the walls gold. "You know," Alex said, his tone more serious, "when I was deployed overseas, I saw people lose hope because they felt invisible. What you did that night in the diner, it reminded me that compassion still exists. That is why I started HeartServe, and I want you to help lead it." Maya hesitated, overwhelmed by the trust in his words. "Lead? Alex, I do not even know where to begin." "Start with what you know," he said. "You know struggle. You know kindness. That is leadership." His voice carried a quiet conviction that steadied her heart. When they finally left, the night air was cool, and the town was silent except for the distant hum of streetlights. Alex walked her home, their steps slow, unhurried. At her building, she turned to him. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For seeing me." He held her gaze for a moment that felt longer than it should have, then nodded once. "Good night, Maya." She watched him walk away, his silhouette fading into the mist, and felt something shift quietly inside her, a sense that maybe, just maybe, her life was meant for something more than surviving. Over the next weeks, she worked closely with Alex and his team. The project grew faster than anyone expected. Local shops began donating supplies, schools organized food drives, and veterans volunteered to repair old houses. Maya found herself coordinating efforts, managing schedules, and speaking to the media, her confidence growing with each day. Yet amid the chaos, there was something unspoken between her and Alex, a shared warmth that neither dared name. One evening, as they reviewed plans at the center, she caught him watching her, a faint smile on his lips. "What?" she asked, blushing. "Nothing," he said. "Just realizing how right I was about you." Maya laughed, shaking her head. But inside, she knew he was right. For the first time in her life, she was not just surviving. She was building something, and it all began with one simple cup of coffee. Weeks passed, and HeartServe became more than a program. It became a movement. The once quiet community center, now buzzed with energy every day. Volunteers came from neighboring towns, veterans brought their families, and children drew colorful thank you cards for the people who helped them. Maya moved like a heartbeat through it all, organizing food drives, managing donations, and training new volunteers. Her days were long, her nights even longer, but she had never felt so alive. One Friday evening, as the last of the volunteers left, Alex walked in carrying 2 takeout boxes. "You have not eaten all day," he said, placing one on the table. She smiled, brushing flour off her apron. "You have been spying on me again?" "No," he said with mock seriousness. "I have been listening to the growl of your stomach from across the room." She laughed, and for a moment the exhaustion lifted. They sat together on the steps outside the center, watching the streetlights blink on one by one. "You have built something incredible here," Alex said quietly. "No," Maya replied. "We built it. You gave people the chance." "Maybe," he said, "but you gave them a reason." There was a pause. The air was cool, the scent of rain carried on the wind. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. "Of course." He hesitated, his usual calm replaced by something almost vulnerable. "When I came back from overseas, I felt lost. Commanding men, making decisions it used to mean everything. But after the last deployment, after the things I saw, it all felt hollow. Then that night at the diner happened. You reminded me that purpose is not about power, it is about people." Maya listened silently, her heart softening with every word. "You did not owe me anything, Alex," she said gently. "But you gave back so much more." "You gave first," he said. "All I did was follow your example." Their eyes met, and the world seemed to slow for a heartbeat. Then Alex looked away, clearing his throat. "Anyway, I wanted you to know that." He stood, his voice returning to its steady tone. "We are hosting an appreciation dinner for our volunteers next week. I want you to be the guest of honor." "Guest of honor?" she repeated, startled. "I am not sure I am ready for that." "You already are," he said with a smile before heading inside. Maya sat alone for a while, the warmth of his words sinking deep. Later that night, as she walked home, she noticed the old street musicians playing outside the diner where it had all begun. She stopped, listening to the familiar hum of their guitars. The world had changed so much, yet somehow it all led back to that one moment of kindness. The next few days flew by as preparations began for the dinner. Maya worked tirelessly alongside the team, decorating the hall with handmade banners and photos of HeartServe's journey. On the day of the event, she wore a simple navy dress her mother had altered for her. The same shade as the first apron she had ever worn at the diner. When she arrived, the hall was already full. Veterans, families, children, even local officials had come to celebrate. But as she stepped in, the crowd parted. And at the far end of the room stood Alex in his dress uniform, a proud but gentle smile on his face. The applause began softly, then grew louder until it filled the hall. Maya's eyes shimmered as she realized every person there was clapping for her, not for fame, but for what they had built together. Alex walked toward her, stopping a few feet away. "You see," he said softly, "kindness multiplies." One cup of coffee became hundreds of lives touched. Maya blinked back tears. "It was never just coffee, was it?" "No," he said. "It was hope." He extended his hand, and she took it, her fingers trembling slightly. As they stood together in the glow of string lights and applause, Maya understood that her small act of kindness had not only changed someone else's life, it had changed her own forever. The night of the appreciation dinner marked a turning point for both Maya and Alex, but neither of them realized just how much their lives were about to change. In the days that followed, HeartServe grew faster than ever. News outlets picked up the story again, calling Maya the waitress who fed a captain and built an army of kindness. Donations poured in, volunteers signed up from across the state, and local businesses offered support. Yet amid all the success, Maya began to notice something different about Alex. He was smiling less, leaving meetings earlier, sometimes disappearing without explanation. One afternoon, after a long day organizing supplies, Maya found him alone in the office, staring at a letter in his hands. "Alex?" she asked softly. He looked up, startled, then forced a small smile. "Maya, you should not still be here." "It is late." She ignored that and walked closer. "What is going on? You have been distant lately." He hesitated, then sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It is nothing, really. Just army business." "You are lying," she said gently. "I can tell." He exhaled slowly, realizing there was no point pretending. "They are reassigning me," he admitted. "Deployment. Overseas. I leave in 2 weeks." The words hit her like a blow. For a moment, the room felt smaller, quieter. "For how long?" "I do not know," he said. "It could be months, maybe longer." Maya swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. "But Heartserve, what about everything we have built?" "It will go on," he said firmly. "Because of you. You are its heart now." She shook her head. "I cannot do this without you." He stepped closer, his expression soft but resolute. "Yes, you can. You already have." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the unspoken words between them hung heavy in the air. Then he smiled faintly. "You once told me kindness is enough to change a life. Now it is time for me to pass that forward where it is needed most." Maya blinked back tears. "Will you come back?" He hesitated just a second too long. "I will try." That night, she went home with a heavy heart, staring at the folded napkin he had given back to her, the one that once said, "Compassion is the highest honor." She placed it in a small wooden frame by her bed. Over the next 2 weeks, the entire town prepared for his farewell ceremony. When the day came, hundreds gathered at the community center. Soldiers stood in perfect formation, flags waving gently in the breeze. Maya watched from the front row as Alex addressed the crowd, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Heartserve began with a simple act of kindness," he said, glancing toward her. "And it will continue because kindness does not belong to one person, it belongs to everyone willing to believe in it." When the ceremony ended, he approached her one last time. "Take care of them," he said, meaning the volunteers, the veterans, the families. "Take care of yourself," she replied. Then, before she could lose her courage, she reached out and hugged him tightly. He froze for a moment, then wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. "Come back safe," she whispered. "That is an order." He smiled against her hair. "Yes, ma'am." Then he was gone, walking toward the waiting transport truck, his silhouette framed by the setting Sunday. As the engine roared to life, Maya felt tears stream down her face. But there was pride there too, because she knew his mission had never really ended. It had simply found a new beginning in the hearts he had touched. That night, she stood outside the diner where it had all started, looking up at the stars. The neon sign flickered softly, casting a warm glow over the quiet street. "You gave when you had nothing," she whispered, repeating his words. "Now I will keep giving." Somewhere out there, halfway across the world, she hoped he could feel it, the echo of that promise carried by the wind. The same way kindness had carried them both from one small act to a story that would never end. Months passed after Alex's departure, and life slowly settled into a new rhythm. The empty space he left behind felt like a shadow following Maya everywhere she went, but she refused to let it consume her. She threw herself into Heartserve, expanding it into neighboring towns, turning her longing into purpose. Every morning she would unlock the doors to the community center and whisper to herself, "Keep it alive, Maya. Keep his promise." Under her leadership, the program grew beyond anyone's imagination. Schools partnered with them to teach students about compassion. Hospitals joined their outreach efforts, and news channels often featured Maya as the face of hope in hard times. But even with all the success, every evening when the volunteers left and the lights dimmed, she would stand by the window and stare at the horizon, wondering where he was, if he was safe, if he still thought about her. One rainy night, she sat alone at her desk, going through letters from soldiers who had received aid through Heartserve. Most thanked her for her kindness. But one envelope stood out. It was older, weathered, with handwriting she knew by heart. Her hands trembled as she opened it. "Dear Maya," it began. "If you are reading this, it means I could not deliver it in person just yet. The mission has been longer than expected, and communication is limited. But I want you to know this. Every time I see an act of kindness here, I think of you. You reminded me that humanity is not lost, even in the darkest places. You taught me to see people, not just uniforms. Keep leading, keep smiling. I will find my way back to you when the world allows it. Alex." Tears blurred her vision as she folded the letter against her heart. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to cry, not from sadness but from hope. The next morning, she gathered her team and announced a new initiative, the One Cup Project, a mobile outreach service that brought warm meals to shelters and hospitals. "This began with 1 cup of coffee," she said during the launch, her voice steady. "Let it continue that way, 1 cup, 1 act, 1 life at a time." The project took off instantly. Volunteers traveled across cities in vans painted with the HeartServe emblem, serving thousands who needed help. Each time Maya handed someone a cup of coffee, she remembered the night she first met Alex, and it made her smile. Seasons changed. Winter melted into spring. And one evening, after a long day at the center, Maya walked past the diner where it had all begun. The neon sign still flickered, the same pink light reflecting off the wet pavement. She pushed the door open, more out of nostalgia than hunger. The air smelled of coffee and rain. She slid into the same booth from that night, tracing the faint scratch marks on the table, when a familiar voice broke through the quiet. "I was hoping you would come here tonight." Her heart stopped. She turned, and there he was, Alex, standing by the door, in civilian clothes but unmistakably him. His hair was a little longer, his face tired but smiling. Maya rose slowly, her breath catching. "Alex?" He nodded, eyes soft. "I told you I would find my way back." For a moment, neither of them moved, afraid that speaking too soon might break the spell. Then she crossed the room and threw her arms around him. He held her tightly, whispering, "I missed you, Maya." "You came back," she said against his chest. "You kept your promise." "And you kept mine," he replied, pulling back to look at her. "You built something that outlived both of us." They sat in that same booth, 2 cups of coffee between them once again, as if no time had passed at all. Outside, the rain fell softly, washing the world clean, and for the first time in a long while, everything felt exactly right. The reunion between Maya and Alex felt like a miracle, but it was not the end of their story. It was the beginning of a new chapter. In the weeks that followed, Alex slowly readjusted to civilian life, spending most of his days helping at the HeartServe Center. The volunteers were thrilled to see him, and the veterans treated him like a legend. Yet for Maya, his return was something deeper, a sense of calm she had not felt since the night he left. They often worked late, sharing quiet dinners over stacks of paperwork, sometimes not saying much, just sitting side by side as if words were no longer necessary. One evening, as they finished organizing donation receipts, Alex leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Do you ever think about how far we have come?" he asked. Maya smiled softly. "Every day, and I still cannot believe any of this started with 1 cup of coffee." "That cup changed my life," he said. "And mine," she whispered. For a moment, the air between them felt charged, unspoken emotions hanging like threads ready to weave into something real. But before either could speak, the door opened and a group of new volunteers entered, laughing and carrying boxes. The moment passed, but the feeling lingered. Over the next few days, they continued to rebuild together, though something unspoken grew between them. Alex began visiting Maya's mother, fixing things around the apartment and cooking meals when Maya was too busy. Her mother adored him, calling him our soldier of kindness. One evening, after dinner, Maya's mother pulled her aside and said gently, "He looks at you the way your father used to look at me. Do not let fear make you miss something beautiful." Those words echoed in Maya's heart long after she went to bed. A week later, HeartServe hosted a charity gala, their biggest event yet, celebrating 5,000 families served. The hall was adorned with candles and banners, and Maya, dressed in a simple white gown, looked radiant. As she greeted guests, she caught sight of Alex across the room in a dark suit, speaking with veterans. When his eyes found hers, it felt like the whole room disappeared. Later that night, as the music slowed, Alex approached her. "May I have this dance?" he asked, extending his hand. She smiled nervously. "I am not much of a dancer." "Neither am I," he said. "But I promise I will not step on your toes." She laughed softly and placed her hand in his. They moved gently to the rhythm of the music, the world around them blurring into soft lights and distant applause. "You know," he said quietly, "when I was overseas, I kept thinking about this moment. Not the dancing, but the idea of coming home and finding peace. Maya looked up at him. "And did you?" "I think I just did," he replied, his gaze steady and warm. She rested her head against his shoulder, feeling his heartbeat match her own. When the song ended, the crowd cheered, unaware that something far more intimate had just unfolded. Later, as they stood outside under the stars, Alex took something from his pocket, a small, folded piece of paper. "Do you remember this?" he asked. Maya's breath caught. It was the same diner receipt she had kept all those months ago, the one she had used to pay for his meal. "You kept it?" "It never left my pocket," he said. "It reminded me that even in the darkest moments, there is always light waiting somewhere." He unfolded it, revealing new handwriting beneath the old ink. "Will you share your forever with me?" Maya's eyes filled with tears as she looked up at him. "Alex," he smiled softly, "I do not have a ring tonight. Just this paper that started everything. But I cannot imagine a life without you in it." She nodded, tears falling freely now. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times. "Yes." The crowd inside erupted in applause when they walked back in hand, and under the soft glow of string lights, the waitress and the soldier finally found the ending. They both deserved a love born from kindness, strengthened by distance, and sealed by the same act that once changed their lives forever. The day of their wedding arrived quietly, not with grand fireworks or luxury, but with the kind of warmth that came from genuine hearts. The ceremony was held in the same community center where HeartServe had begun, surrounded by the people whose lives had been touched by their kindness. Veterans in uniform lined the aisles, children waved handmade flags, and the air smelled faintly of fresh flowers and coffee, a deliberate choice by Maya. She wanted it to feel like home, like the diner where it all started. As she stood before Alex, dressed in a simple lace gown, she could not help but think of the girl she once was, the tired waitress, counting coins, and dreaming of something better. Now, here she was, standing beside the man who had turned her small act of compassion into a movement that changed lives. Alex looked at her with the same steady gaze he had worn that rainy night years ago, but this time it carried peace, belonging, and love. "You once told me that kindness is enough to change a life," he said during his vows, voice trembling slightly. "But you were wrong, Maya. Kindness changed the world because it found you first." The crowd chuckled softly, and Maya wiped a tear before speaking. "And you," she said, her voice full of warmth, "taught me that leadership is not about commanding people, it is about standing beside them. You taught me what strength looks like when it is gentle." They exchanged rings under the glow of afternoon sunlight, their hands shaking but sure. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the room erupted in applause, soldiers saluting, children cheering. Alex leaned in, whispering against her ear, "Welcome home, Mrs. Reed." Later that evening, as the reception began, laughter and music filled the hall. People danced, shared stories, and toasted to the couple who had brought light to their small town. Maya and Alex moved through the crowd, thanking each person, hugging the veterans, and smiling at the families who had once needed help but were now giving back. Near the end of the night, Alex guided her outside. The sun had already set, and the sky was painted with soft shades of gold and violet. "I have something to show you," he said. In the center of the courtyard stood a new plaque mounted on the wall. It read, "Maya's Kitchen for Heroes, founded on 1 cup of coffee." She gasped softly, covering her mouth as tears filled her eyes. "Alex, when did you do this?" "It was always your story," he said. "Now it belongs to everyone who believes that one small act can change everything." She wrapped her arms around him, whispering, "You never stop surprising me." "That is the plan," he said with a grin. Months passed, and their life settled into a beautiful rhythm. They continued to lead HeartServe together, traveling across states, opening new centers, and sharing their message of kindness. Each anniversary, they returned to the same diner, sat at the same booth, and ordered 2 cups of coffee the same way it began. The waitress who served them once asked if it was an anniversary tradition, and Maya simply smiled. "It is a reminder," she said, "that love, like kindness, always finds its way back." In the end, their story became legend, a reminder that no gesture is ever too small to matter. And long after they grew old, the world continued to remember the waitress who paid for a soldier's meal, and the soldier who brought an army to thank her. Their lives proved one simple truth. Kindness is not just something you give, it is something that lives on, multiplying in every heart it touches. As the final line engraved beneath their names read, "From one cup of coffee, a lifetime of love was brewed."